We've got Brad from New Jersey, he, him pronouns. You've got something on your mind, I think, that came up in a past show or something, but why don't you tell us a little bit about it, Brad?
Oh, wow. First time really calling in. So sorry if I'm sound a little nervous about this.
No, you'll do great.
Oh, thank you. I was listening to a show on March 5th, and one of the callers, am I allowed to use the names of the people who called in, or?
Don't worry about it. Just go with what the conversation was, and we'll go from there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. It was a conversation on March 5th, and the caller was calling in to the show to discuss why he felt that well-being was not a good format to make morality. And he particularly said that society is static and should not change. And this is because the Bible went with that. And already I had, listening in, I was very, like, okay, this doesn't really make sense. The hosts are pointing out that society is always changing. And, there's always chaos. And life is never, it's not about remaining in one place, which is a bad thing. And then towards the end of the call, they asked him, what would you do if you went back 200 years ago and slavery in the United States, you saw that, what would you say that the slaves should do? And one of the hosts said that, well, they have to rebel because it's the right thing to do. It's slavery. And the call said, no, well, they shouldn't do that because it would only add to the chaos. And, he was again still using the Bible as his moral guideline to say this. And when they pushed on him that if you don't think slavery's right, which you clearly said that slavery isn't good, then how are they supposed to fight for their freedom? And the guy's like, well, they shouldn't have enslaved the people in the first place. And I'm like, this is the most morally bankrupt call in a person I've heard in a long time who's not like a politician. And I just have to wonder, one is that I wish the host went a little harder in that, because that is accepting evil. And second of all, there's no moral background to that. You're essentially a blank slate who accepts evil based on authority figures. The guy's not willing to fight. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm following along with you, Brad, because I'm right there with you a lot of the times. I feel like this argument of you really can only be a good person coming from this deity, right? Coming from this ancient book and whatnot, these cultish practices and all that nonsense. I often find that it is some of the most just garbage reasons, right? It fascinates me that somebody has to be offered either eternal, horrific punishment or the most amazing present they could ever receive forever, just to simply not rape other people, just to not murder other people, right? Just simply to not be an asshole. Funny enough, I wake up in the morning and just go, gosh, I just don't want to murder anybody today. And it doesn't take any more than that. And justifying it with this, because God, sent his son and then, brutally murdered him, and now we eat his crackers every so often. That's the reason that you don't go outside and kick puppies? That's what stops you? That's ridiculous to me. I just don't have those thoughts. I just don't. And yeah, again, Brad, I'm with you. I think a lot of times these religious notions of why be good and so forth is just shit. And at the end of the day, I think what we're all using is well-being in some form or fashion. I think most of the time we just apply it incorrectly, right? We use it in one scenario where we can see the benefit to us individually, right? But then when it comes to the person down the street, we go, oh, no, well, that doesn't benefit me personally. But see, again, you're still using that system. So my argument is just apply it equally across the fucking board, right?
Yeah, expand it a little bit, be thoughtful about it, recognize that well-being today doesn't necessarily mean well-being for everybody always in the future, which you're never going to be able to have like a perfect zoomed out, cosmic perspective. You're only human.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to be, is the best possible humans we can be. And I think that we could talk about like deontology versus utilitarianism and really get into it. But I think well-being is a very useful guide, if nothing else.
Yeah. What do you think on all that, Brad?
I think, that sounds really about right. And although like that type of argument with we should leave society to remain the same, it just seems so based on like, I don't want to say conservative values, like in terms of like how we understand, politics, but there does seem to be like a tendency with those who want tradition to always stick with that. And I'm trying to figure out like, how do you get to that point? Like I guess you can be indoctrinated by it, but even then there's a certain point where you have to say like, no, I still may believe in the religion, but this is clearly wrong. So I'm going to go with my,
I think one big problem with that, Brad, is really just a misattribution for where the benefit for this individual that they have experienced in some capacity, where that benefit came from. I think we often hear, especially like, and not trying to be ageist or anything, but this is definitely an argument that's made by more of the 60 plus crowd, where things used to be so much better in 1930, and it was such a great time in the 50s.
Golden mentality thinking, yeah.
And one reason I think that's the case is because like, oh, you were fucking 5. Like you didn't know shit about World War II. Like you didn't, and that's okay. That's okay that was the case because like 20, 25 years ago, I didn't know stuff, and I thought just little bumbling Elliot running around happy-go-lucky and stuff. I'm like, man, the world is fucking awesome. And then, it was like, oh my gosh, look at all these wars and like look at all this garbage that's happening.
Not just what you don't know, but also the stress that you carry.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are going to interpret the world as full of promise and opportunity and abundance when all of your meals are taken care of, when all of your stresses are dealt with. When you are 45 and dealing with all of that shit yourself, you're going to be a lot more willing to say, well, back then, everything was so easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, the misattribution, I think, with religion is people experience certain benefits, right, in various ways, and they are attributing it to the belief, when in reality, it's not the belief. It's not the belief in souls that makes, a lot of people have good experiences. It's when they're around other people, when they're around other human beings and they can have a conversation and connect with each other. And it's like, yeah, again, just kind of like what our audience member, was asking about. We've got better methods. We really do. And I think the goal should always be to look for even better methods, right? I mean, you said it right. We'll never be fucking perfect with it. Sure. It'll never be done. It is a task that, starting right now, we should all comfortably know we will all die without that perfect system. But that's awesome. That is the greatest opportunity we have. Because if we had it all fucking figured out, written down 2,000 years ago, what the hell are we doing? What, like why isn't everything better? And it's probably because that 2,000-year-old stuff is just shit. And we've learned a lot of better things, and there's always more stuff to learn. So, yeah, again, I'd have to say society being static isn't great. I'm not a big fan of that, and I'd also say that well-being is kind of the way to go. So we appreciate you giving us a call on that, Brad, because I think that was a pretty good topic. I'm always down to talk about morals. I do. I love talking about morality. So.
Yeah, no, fair to say. It's worthwhile to recognize that, yeah, we don't have some ancient book telling us how to be good people, and yet somehow we manage.
Right. That's so interesting. Again, yeah, I think it was Penn Jillette that said that, like, I murder and all the people I want to, which is exactly zero.
Zero, yeah.
Right? And it's like, yeah, like that thought for me really was, it seems so basic and mundane, and yet it really does have a lot of meaning, because it's like, no, I just don't want to treat people like shit. Like, and if you go with that goal, funny enough, like, you actually can accomplish it. No belief in a God necessary. So,